I'm going to teach you how to play Battlestar Galactica. Battlestar Galactica is a traitor game set in the world of the TV series. Players are divided into two groups, humans and Cylons. Humans win the game by moving the ship at least 8 distance and then making one final jump to Kobol. Cylons win the game by preventing the humans from making this objective. They can do so in 6 different ways. They can reduce any of the gauges to 0. That means that they can make the humans run out of fuel, food, morale, or population. In addition, the Cylons immediately win if the boarding party marker, a Centurion, makes it all the way down the boarding party track. And finally, the Cylons will immediately win if they can blow up Galactica. This means that at any given time, if there are 6 damage tokens on Galactica simultaneously, the humans immediately lose. Battlestar Galactica is an epic game, and it comes with a lot of components. To begin with, you'll have the You Are Not a Cylon cards and the You Are a Cylon cards. These will be dealt out at the very beginning of the game, and again halfway through the game. If you were given a You Are Not a Cylon card and a You Are a Cylon card, then you are a Cylon. The You Are Not a Cylon cards just have a little flavor text in the middle, nothing much to say there. But the You Are a Cylon cards will give you a special ability when you reveal yourself. In addition, there are also sympathizer cards. Sympathizer cards will only be used in certain numbers of players and will come into play halfway through the game. A sympathizer is a human that may end up playing on the Cylon side, depending on if they're winning or losing. In addition, there are destination cards. These cards have a number at the bottom depicting distance. Once the Galactica has moved 8 distance, you can make one final jump to Kobol and win the game as the humans. In addition, in the middle, you'll see some sort of penalty, sometimes also a benefit. Usually, destination cards involve spending fuel. Next up are crisis cards in 3 different flavors. A crisis card has a lot of stats on it. At the top, you'll see the name of the crisis, and in the top left corner, you'll see the difficulty of the crisis, and below that, the colors that contribute positively to solving the crisis. In the crisis phase, players will put skill check cards in the middle, and these colors of skill checks will add to making the difficulty. Other colors will subtract. In the middle, you'll see a little flavor text, and below that, you'll see the fail conditions, pass conditions, and the halfway conditions. In other words, if you get at least 8 on this skill check, but you don't quite make the 11 difficulty, then there will be a lesser penalty. At the bottom, you'll see what enemy ships activate, in this case, heavy raiders, and you also see a potentially orange star, which means that you move one forward on the jump track. The jump track helps you get to the next point of jumping when you get a new destination card. If you don't see the orange star, then you do not move forward on the jump track. Other types of crises just simply involve a choice that one of the players has to make. There is no skill check involved. It's simply choosing between 2 negative things with occasional benefits thrown in. Same symbols apply at the bottom. This one has the base stars launching new ships. And finally, there are the crisis cards that involve the enemy ships simply activating and attacking Galactica. You'll go through these cards step by step to determine how the enemy ships will activate and move. There are also super crisis cards. These cards work like a regular crisis, except only a revealed Cylon can play them from the Cylon ship. Every player will use skill check cards. On your character chart, which I'll get to shortly, you'll see how many skill check cards you get every turn. These skill check cards have a number in the top corner that gives you the value toward completing checks, specifically crises. In the middle, you'll see some effects. If you don't see the term action, like in this card, then you can play it when it says. For instance, this one is played before resolving a skill check. If you do see the word action, then you can instead play one of these cards as your action for your turn. Every card has a color, which tells you what type of card it is, tactics, politics, etc., and also, of course, what skill checks it's helpful or detrimental toward. You also have a number of little cardboard standees, which will depict your character. Tom Zarek is the best. And of course, you'll have the full character sheet, which will tell you your abilities, how many cards you draw at the beginning of your turn and of what colors. And at the bottom, you'll see a detriment. This is something that will make it harder for your character to win the game if you're human. You'll also have a number of damage tokens, which are placed on Galactica when it gets hit. These damage tokens are shuffled, and when they're flipped, they'll depict some sort of detriment. Some damage tokens will show a specific location on Galactica that will be disabled when they are flipped. Others will instead attack a resource, like food. The same is basically true of the damage tokens for the base stars. If a base star receives 3 damage, it is destroyed, but each damage token also randomly disables one element of the base star. For instance, this prevents a base star it's on from firing. Along with the standees, you'll also have these little discs depicting all the pilot characters. This disc is placed below the Vipers when the character is piloting a ship. That brings me to the plastic ships. There are Vipers, which are the allied ships that players can get in, fly around to attack enemies. Raptors, which are simply risked in order to achieve certain effects. The Raiders and Heavy Raiders, which are the enemy ships. Heavy Raiders will try to launch Centurions on Galactica, while Raiders will simply try to damage your ships. And of course, the base stars, which launch enemy ships and attack Galactica. You'll also have the Admiral and President role cards. At the beginning of the game, these will be given out to players in a particular line of succession. They will be held until some event changes the current President or Admiral. The Admiral comes with 2 nuke tokens, which he can launch at base stars to do massive damage to them. The President includes an entire quorum deck. The quorum deck allows the President to do a variety of things, like give inspirational speeches. These cards are pretty self-explanatory. They'll usually simply have an action that you can use them as in the middle. Finally, you'll have the first player token, or the active player token, which will pass around the table, and 1d8 for resolving combat and risking raptors. Since Battlestar Galactica is such a massive game, there's a little bit of setup involved. First, you'll place all the dials to the top marker with the arrow. Then, you'll place the fleet marker on the start space of the jump track. Next, you'll randomly determine the starting player. That player will choose the first character. He can choose from any character available, especially Tom Zarek, and once he does, then the next player will have to choose a character of a different type. Since Tom Zarek is a political leader, the next player will have to choose a character that is either a support character, which can always be chosen, a pilot, or a military leader. Once your team has assembled one of every type, then the next player is free to choose again from all the types. This continues until everybody has a character. Then those players take the character charts and the associated standees and place the standees on the starting spaces as indicated on the character chart. Then you'll give out the 2 role cards, the President and the Admiral. These cards will go to the players listed first in the line of succession for each role. The Admiral will get the nuke tokens, and the President will get the deck of quorum cards. The President will start with 1 quorum card in hand. Then you'll form the loyalty deck. This is formed with a combination of you are not a Cylon, you are a Cylon, and potentially sympathizer cards. This is done according to the system as displayed here and in the rulebook. Once you've formed the loyalty deck, then you will deal out skills. The skills cards are shuffled into 5 different decks, and every player can draw at this time a number of skills based on their colors here. Each player except the starting player of the game will receive 3 skills at this time, and they can receive them in any combination of the colors they possess. This means that Tom Zarek has access to yellow, green, and purple, so he can take 3 of any one, or some combination that adds up to 3. Once the skill cards have been given out, you'll place these ships as shown here. A base star in front of Galactica, along with 3 Raiders, 2 Vipers beneath Galactica, and 2 civilian ships at the back. Now, you'll create the first Destiny deck. The Destiny deck is comprised of 2 cards from the top of each of the skill decks. This will be created periodically throughout the game when it runs out in the same fashion. Now you're ready to begin the game. Battlestar Galactica is played out in turns, and on your turn, you'll go through 6 steps. First, you'll receive skill cards as shown on your character chart. If you have a multi-skill, like Apollo's green-yellow multi-skill, You can choose any combination that adds up to that number from either of the two skill decks. Once you've drawn your skill cards, you can move. When you're moving aboard Galactica, one movement can take you anywhere on the ship. There is nothing to worry about for distance. The same is true for Colonial 1. However, if you're moving to or from Galactica, then you must discard a skill card. Then you can take one action. Your action can either be the action depicted on any of the locations on the ship, or it can be an action listed on a skill card, or it can be an action shown on your character chart. After you take your action, you'll draw a crisis card. When you draw a crisis, you'll show it to every player, and then you'll go over what it does, and you'll take 2 cards. If it's a skill crisis, like this one, you'll take 2 cards from the top of the Destiny deck, keep them face down, and put them in the middle of the table. Then, every player, starting with the player to the left of the active player, will declare how many skill cards he or she is putting into the mix. You'll keep going in that order until everyone has placed as many skill cards as he'd like in the middle of the table. You'll shuffle those skill cards together and then reveal them. Any cards that are of the colors shown on the crisis, in this case yellow, green, and red, contribute positively to completing the challenge. Any other colors will contribute negatively in the amounts shown at the top of the skill card. If you make the difficulty rating, in this case 11, then you have passed the check, and you will follow the pass effect, in this case no effect. If you fail it, you take the fail penalty, and for some there is a partial success. For instance, if you hit 8 or more, then you'll get the partial failure penalty on this card. After that, you'll activate enemy ships as shown in your crisis. In this case, you'll activate any heavy raiders on the board. If there are no heavy raiders, then you do not do anything. Heavy raiders activations will also activate the centurions that the heavy raiders place. When a heavy raider reaches one of the 2 tube spaces on Galactica and then activates, he will deposit a centurion, which will be placed on the start track of this boarding track. Every time heavy raiders activate in the future, this token will move along the track, and if he is not killed on the armory location, then the humans will lose when he reaches the end of it. If you see this icon, this means that any base stars present will launch raiders, 3 raiders each. If there are no base stars present, you simply ignore this. This icon means that base stars will attack Galactica according to the battle chart. You'll roll a d8, and on a certain result, you'll damage the ship using the damage tokens that I explained earlier. If there are no base stars, again, this is ignored. Finally, this symbol activates raiders. When this happens, any raiders will activate following a few steps. First, raiders will try to attack any manned Vipers. Then they will try to attack unmanned Vipers. Then, if there are no Vipers, they will try to attack any civilian ships. If there are no civilian ships, they will move to try to get closest to the next civilian ship. Once you've activated all the enemies, then the last phase of the turn is potentially moving up the jump track. If you see one of these orange stars, then you will move up the jump track 1 space. If you do not, then you won't. When the jump track is on the -3 or the -1 space, any player may go to the FTL control space and use their action to try to jump the ship. When you do so, you'll roll a die, and there's a chance that you'll lose some population when you jump, people you're leaving behind. However, if you don't use this option, then when you get to the end of the jump track, the space depicting auto jump, then the ship will automatically jump. Either way, when the ship jumps, you'll take the top 2 cards. The Admiral only will look at the top 2 cards of the destination deck, choose one of them to resolve, and put the other one on the bottom of the deck. The Admiral can say, in general, what the card was, good or bad, but may not give any specifics, such as the exact number of spaces or the name of the card. You'll continue in this manner until the ship has moved 8 distance, and then made one final jump to Kobol, making the humans win, or if the Cylons meet any of their victory conditions by preventing the humans from reaching their goal. Now you know how to play Battlestar Galactica.